Good afternoon, comrades, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We're now at a stage where we can officially begin with our program, which is an unmediated forum convened under the auspices of the African National Congress, a platform created basically to allow space for engagement, discussion, as we continue to search for better solutions to bring about a better life for our people. The African National Congress, being not only a ruling party, but a leader of society, has a responsibility to converse with all those who care about the future of our country. We don't want to converse with ourselves only, but want to create as many platforms as possible so that we bring on board a variety of views to build a South Africa of our dreams. So welcome to all of you colleagues and comrades. Welcome to the provincial chairperson of the ANC, Comrade Anckzn, and the entire leadership, Comrade Mahlobo, the chair of the ANC PC subcommittee on education, PC members who are here. I can see Upechano Mhlope, and other comrades who have joined on a virtual platform. We also want to welcome different comrades and colleagues from various sectors of our society, like the academics, the majority of whom have joined on a virtual platform, the business sector, the professionals, some who are here, comrades who are leaders of students in various campuses, the ANC support team, and everyone really who has joined us and who are following us on social media platforms. You are all welcomed. My name is Mshengu, the PEC member of the ANC, and I will be moderating or facilitating this program. So that we don't waste much time on preliminaries, I will go straight to the second item. Before I introduce the panelists, we will allow the chairperson of the subcommittee on education, Comrade Mahlobo, to do the opening and welcome officially. Comrade Mahlobo, over to you.
Thanks, Comrade Mshengu. Greetings. Chairperson of the ANC in the province, Comrade Anckzn Unmediated, members of the PEC present, comrades from the Progressive Youth Alliance, leaders in different stratas of our society, as Comrade Mshengu has mentioned, from business, academia, NGOs, and many other civil society organizations. This is the platform we are starting to put in place as the ANC in the province of KwaZulu-Natal for us to engage with the broader society. That when we say we are a leader of society as an organization, we do not only represent our views as African National Congress, we represent the views and the aspirations of all our people. Even those who might not have voted for you as a political party to be in power at a particular moment, whether you are in the province or you are at the national level or any other level. So now and then it would be proper for us when we engage that we start that process of taking into cognizance that broader level of society to say that, are we still on track as an organization? If we are not on track, what are our failures? What are our challenges? In the previous year, we had a hot seat where we're to bring in the ANC mayors, where in the major cities were leading then, to come and account on the work they have done. Today, this unmediated forum is a reflection on the last local government elections. We are still planning other sessions as we move forward on a number of societal issues, as we will be preparing for our provincial conference, as we will be preparing for a policy conference, as we will be preparing for the ANC National Conference. Because we believe that the ANC is a mass movement which need to hear voices from different areas of society. We don't want all to hear ourselves speaking to ourselves. We need that critical voice to say to us as an organization, if you are not moving correct here, what are you doing wrong and what we must correct? That's one thing which is unique about the ANC, that as an organization, we allow the self-introspection, but more than that, we allow that the broader society, because they've got a keen interest on this organization, they also help to shape it and inform it on the direction as we move forward. So this is a platform for engagement today. It is a platform for engaging, not confined to us as ANC members, but to the broader society of KwaZulu-Natal. And we hope your views and input will help us as an organization to inform us as we move forward, but also to inform us that as a governing party in the province and in some of the major cities within the province, how we should move as we move forward, where there are lapses, where are those lapses, and how can we correct them. So with those brief few words, welcome to all who are present here and those who are joining us on virtual platforms. I'm sure as we proceed, the chair of the session will introduce them and they will make their input. I'm sure all of us, those input and those who are joining us in different news channels and social media platforms, they'll have that platform of engaging and inputting so that out of this process, we can start a new page of engaging honestly and reflecting and working on building a better province for us in KwaZulu-Natal. I thank you very much. You're most welcome. Siyabonga.
Thank you so much, Mahlobo, for those words of opening and welcome. Well, comrades and colleagues, today's topic is really about the reflections on the ANC performance in the last local government elections. It is now of public record that the performance of the ANC was not a desired performance. And I dare say not only for the ANC membership, but for the society as a whole. Because in some instances, the outcomes are actually threatening to reverse the gains that we have scored under the leadership of the African National Congress. So that will be the thrust of our topic today. Where did we go wrong? What are future prospects? And Comrade Chair, Comrade Zigalala, recently I went back to the strategy and tactics of the ANC just to remind myself about certain things that the organization instructs us to do. Now, under the section of I think, balance of forces, where the ANC is analyzing the domestic balance of forces, I found a passage which was actually warning us about the outcomes of the recent elections. And I will just read it. It says there is a possibility that the mass of the people can, by commission or omission, precipitate an electoral outcome that places into position of authority forces that can deceitfully chip away at the progressive realization of the National Democratic Society. So this is what the ANC says in 2017 in Nasrec. And indeed, 4 years later, it becomes a reality. But we have three panelist colleagues that will be helping us to initiate the discussions on this important matter as we reflect on the electoral performance of the ANC. We will have Dr. Pali Lehotla, who's a former statistician general, who will basically be talking about the electoral trends, I think, over the past 10 years. What do they mean? And possibly what do they mean about the future if things don't change? So we'll have the former SG, statistician general, who will be leading us as a first panelist to speak. He's on a virtual platform. He will then be followed by Mr. Lukhona Mnguni, who is an academic and one of the opinion makers and political analyst. He will also be taking us through the ANC standing in society, whether it's real or perceived, but we assigned him that task for him to then tell us what does the society say about the ANC? How does it look towards the ANC? And then we'll have the provincial chairperson, Comrade Tukhuzeni, who will then speaking about now the reflection from the ANC side and what the ANC will be doing going forward. So those are the three panelists that will be leading us in terms of these discussions. And after that, comrades, colleagues, we will then open for comments and further engagement from colleagues who have joined us here and those who are on a virtual platform. And then we close our session. We don't intend to make it long. We want to keep it as brief but as rich as possible. So I'm sure the former SG, is he able to hear us?
I am, sir.
Thank you so much. You are most welcome, and we can now hand over the platform to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I think one should say that the moment we are in,
Yes, we can see it.
all right, no, that's fine. I really think that the moment we are in is a repeat of where we were in 1990. first question. I think we achieved the first one, that a settlement was negotiated and was representative. A transition was rapid because it didn't take that long, 3 years. And the question that still remains today that we haven't answered is whether the policies we adopted were populist. And of course, we adopted GEAR, which was a counter-populist set of policies. The question is, having implemented GEAR and implemented many other policies, that necessarily, given what we get as advice from the IMF and the World Bank and advice from ourselves, were not populists. They were not populist. The policies we adopted were not populist. Now, why are we where we are? And why is the World Bank asking the question or presenting to us that we are the most unequal society, when in actual fact, some of the policies that we implemented were on their advice? I'm not suggesting to blame the IMF or the World Bank, but I'm saying they put that advice and they come and say, look at these policies that we have implemented, they have not delivered. So I think we have to step back as we think about ourselves. And of course, we had these policies that were reviewed, and then we had Anckzn. And these gave us almost a direction towards socialism, away from good is nice, away from skedonk, and away from Dudisana. I'm bringing scenarios here because in government, there was a point in time when we actually discussed scenarios. And this good is nice, this memories of the future, where the scenarios that were discussed at cabinet with the DGs. And we were part of those. That was between 2000 and up to 2008. And the scenarios were no longer discussed. But in the years 2003 to 2008, surely the ruling party was a clear leader of society in terms of what was delivered. But of course, Pulukwan happened, and another set of scenarios in government were actually looked at. And what we are doing today is what in 2008 we predicted, that by this time, the leader of society will be coming to society and saying, we are sorry, we have misled you. That's exactly what we are doing. And I think you should go and read the scenarios, the memories of the future. You should read the Montclair scenarios, the memories of the future, and the future we chose. And of course, we developed the other scenarios, which are the implemented scenarios. And of course, no doubt, the country is in a Gwara state. And the memories of the future we chose was saying, we'll be in that state where the leader of society will come and say, we will have betrayed you. And you are doing exactly that now, which is quite fine. But coming to the KwaZulu-Natal province, there was a survey that SSA did, and I think I want to talk to that survey results. And I know I have only 10 minutes. I might have spent now 3 minutes of my time. It looked at municipality type A, type B, B2, B3, and B4, because that's what we are looking at, the local government elections, metropolitan, secondary cities, local municipalities. And in dealing with this one thing that KwaZulu-Natal did very well was to come with a developmental theme, which is Operation Sikumasaki. And the design of the system and the implementation and execution of it moved from one premier to the next up to where Sihla Sigalala Premier Sigalala is. And when we investigated and inquired, we found that society in KwaZulu-Natal understands and is aware of Operation Sikumasaki. So when we think about the district development model, it appears that KwaZulu-Natal has something that it can actually show. But of course, in July, we banned the whole KwaZulu-Natal, and so we have many other problems. But these thinking, the theory of development that is executed in a particular way, where all ministers had responsibility over space, not about over their own area of work, but over space, made Operation Sukuma Sake something that can be talked to. Now, no doubt, in South Africa, poverty was reduced. Look at where Msinga was, 60% poverty. Over a period of time from 2011 to 2001, Msinga's poverty actually got reduced from 60 in 100 to about 40 in 100. And that continued. And you can see where Msinga is. Where it was there. And where Msinga is, it's here. And many other municipalities actually saw and witnessed reduction in poverty. Now, but something has happened in terms of the investigation we did in 2015 and 2016, is that type A municipalities seem to be having better idea. And KwaZulu-Natal asked us, Mapingwane asked us, the first Mapingwane, asked us to come and run a survey to understand how citizens think about KwaZulu-Natal government, both national, provincial, and local. And when you look at this, you can see that there's a bit of better clustering in type A dispersion in type B1, B2, a little bit of that, but type B4 is actually dispersed. So if you think about human settlements, you would have thought that the level of satisfaction will center around, in terms of housing, toilet, electricity, and water, around the same point. But it is dispersed, which means what we are talking about is not human settlement, it's but a house, a toilet, electricity, and water, and not something that talks to how people live. And this is the situation. And part of what we are seeing here drives dissatisfaction. That you are satisfied with your water at 70%, at 80%, but not with your house, at 40% here, at 20%. So this dispersion suggests that we don't have human settlements across the country, not only in KwaZulu-Natal, but across the country. So we do have a dissatisfied population. And here we can see how the access to piped water increased, electricity increased, and the sanitation from 51 to 76%. Great development, great improvement. But it's not done in an integrated way, which Operation Sukuma Sake was trying to achieve, but it couldn't achieve. You can see that this in this image here of the level of dispersion that we see here. So there is something that has to be done there. Of course, this is how poverty headcount was in 2001, with this particular area here having the highest poverty levels. And this is what happened in 2011. That's a spatial distribution of poverty, which shows that between 2001 and 2011, poverty was greatly reduced. But unemployment still remains the enemy, and years of schooling. When you combine these two, unemployment and years of schooling, in KwaZulu-Natal, the level of discontent is driven by 50% by these two elements, and they have to be addressed. Not sanitation, not water, not heating, these are minor. And of course, what we also saw were the coalition governments there. And then in these coalition governments, particularly amongst B3 and B4 municipalities, we see a predominance of coalition governments. And what we want to look at here is how did these coalition governments actually perform? We see the level of dissatisfaction in that survey, 36%, somewhat satisfied, 31%, and 33% overall satisfaction. So there is a level of dissatisfaction in KwaZulu-Natal of 36%. So you can imagine with that level of dissatisfaction, what the election outcomes would be, including the non-functional coalitions. And we see what were the areas with better outright satisfaction, with 35 to 80%, 50 to 60%. You can see this and so on. But we also have outright level of dissatisfaction, what we call the Northeast corridor of dissatisfaction. You can see it here. And this is where the ANC, even in the previous local government elections, started losing and then going into coalitions. ANC didn't do better in this election because of that level. But job creation as a priority that has to be met covers all KwaZulu-Natal. This is a survey that STSA did in 2018. So housing, actually, when you look at the whole of KwaZulu-Natal, what dominates is we want better housing, we want better education, but education very scarce, and then crime prevention. These are the concerns of citizens that have to be addressed. And of course, these are the coalitions that you had, and these are the coalitions predominantly in this corridor of dissatisfaction. So the dissatisfaction created conditions for ANC not getting a 50%, 50+1, and therefore engaging in coalitions. And those coalitions were also dysfunctional. So in short, there is a very serious danger of the party going forward as a leader of society. When it comes to outright satisfaction, we can see what happens here in Mhlathuze, in Newcastle. But the difference between people's satisfaction at local government level and at provincial level differs by about 11 percentage points. So what I'm arguing here is that, and then of course, outright that is outright satisfaction, yes, is by 11 percentage points. Chair, I'm going through the different municipalities. You can see each time I press here, there are different municipalities. So what have I said? I think what I've tried to say is that there's something that is going well for KwaZulu-Natal, which is Operation Skumasaki, which is a development language that was followed by specific actions. But even then, that was not enough, because the level of dissatisfaction in KwaZulu-Natal as far back as 2015 were high. There's something going for KwaZulu-Natal that the premiers of KwaZulu-Natal have asked STSA to continue undertaking this service to understand what is happening in KwaZulu-Natal at different levels of municipalities. And this informs KwaZulu-Natal well. But whether you are using that for analysis and positioning the leader of society is another matter. I'm sure you have to deal with that yourselves. We see that the level of dissatisfaction occurs in the Northeast corridor of dissatisfaction. And there ANC lost power or went into serious coalition. And the coalition governments, by their nature, in an immature democracy, actually doesn't lead to anything great. So what should I say? I think you should continue with the Operation Skumasake, continue assessing the population on the ground, and ensure that you use the data to respond to what you find on the ground. I don't think you use that data to respond appropriately. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that short presentation. We'll then go straight to Lukhona Mnguni. I'm sure comrades and colleagues have been noting, so that when you comment, you can then combine all the three presentations that we are going to receive. But thank you so much for MSG. We will now go to Lukhona Mnguni. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'll try to switch on my video so that people can see the face, but just a bit of apologies, Chair. I'd indicated that I've lost a friend, Bruce Okokoti, so I might not be able to be here until 6:30, but I thought let me at least share my thinking in terms of the proposed topic. The first thing is just to make a statement about the province of KwaZulu-Natal and its electoral performance. I call the province one of our democratic successes in terms of the ability for power to shift hands, and it probably tells us something about the psyche of voters in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and their ability to vote with their feet. Because unlike in other jurisdictions where you see this mass exodus from participation, where people do not turn up. So yes, the voter turnout might have been gradually, decreasing over time, but it's not in other provinces where other parties will succeed simply because the ANC voters have not turned out. There seems to be a trend in KwaZulu-Natal since 1994 that voters actually do change their political preferences. There's a study I did in 2019 in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which we termed 1,000 Rural Voices. And we went to all the 10 districts across the province and selected certain rural towns. And when we asked people if they had ever voted for a different party, about a quarter of our participants indicated that they had. In some areas, when you do studies of that nature, it's quite low in actual fact. People tend to be very loyal to their political parties. If they are dissatisfied with its conduct or unhappy with its offering, they tend to change their allegiance and go elsewhere. So the ANC has been the underdog of KwaZulu-Natal politics, at least up until 2006, when you decided to undo the coalition with the Inkatha Freedom Party, and then, of course, went on to 2009 to have quite a sizable win. But what we saw on the 1st of November 2021, even if you go to areas like Eshowe, where the ANC's wards, some of them were overturned by the IFP, in parts of eThekwini by the Democratic Alliance, is that the voters are perhaps communicating something to the African National Congress in KwaZulu-Natal to say, we've become unhappy with some of your conduct, whether in government or as a political party. But I think a lot is said about the ANC stay in government and the whole idea of the sins of incumbency. And little time is afforded at analyzing the African National Congress as an organization. And I'm going to spend a bit of time doing that now. There are three things I propose have become a problem for the ANC. One, it's a question around a value system that governs or does not govern the party. The second is around the identity of the organization. And the third is really about how the organization seems incapable to implement those things that it knows it should implement. On the first one, there is a growing sense of disrespect. And when I deal with values, and that's the first value I'm going to deal with, the absence of respect within the organization. And this absence of respect within the organization plays itself out in the public domain. We see ANC leaders fight each other. We see them disrespect the authority of the other. We see them organize in unorganizational ways, whether it be protests to party headquarters, or even worse off when we see some ANC offices being bent down because people simply have grievances. That is an absence of respect for each other and an absence of respect for the organization and an absence of respect for the processes which the organization has implemented. So there are instances where you find that ANC members have lost confidence in the very organizational processes because they believe they get manipulated. We know this because it does feature in some of the organizational reports that you publish, especially at a national level, which we thoroughly read, those of us who have been doing some research on the ANC. But what has the ANC done about this absence of respect, besides talking about the need to foster unity and renewal? How do you re-engineer respect among comrades who have eroded that respect amongst each other? I will leave that as a question for the ANC to probably answer, but I do think that from a values point of view, you need to return respect to how the organization functions, to how membership perceives the organizations and how it interacts with its leadership and structures. The second one really being around, this idea that the ANC doesn't do what it knows it should. But I'll get to that. But let me deal quickly with the identity issue. When you read ANC documents, one, the ANC perceives itself as the leader of society, as Dr. Padile Hotla has alluded. Secondly, the ANC perceives itself to have a dual identity of a liberation movement and a party in government. The latter is problematic, and I have written about this a few times. It's problematic because it does not focus you in terms of what your core business is. What is the core business of the ANC today? Is it being a party in government? Which, if that would be the case, it would inform the organizational structure of the ANC. For example, who is the head of the governance unit in the ANC for a party in government? Who is the person who continuously does the evaluation work of the ANC in government? And part of the proposals, which I thought actually were quite progressive going to the NASREC conference in 2017, was that the ANC should consider having 3 deputy secretary general. And some of these DSGs would actually be used for monitoring and evaluation of the work of the party in government, because you need to define the terms of reference for that office, its work scope, and how it can then propose certain recommendations. And part of those recommendations could be to recall inefficient, underperforming public representatives. Currently, people are only recalled for considerations of factional positioning, considerations of patronage dispensation, and considerations generally of whether or not they've fallen out with the leadership of the day. But how do you make sure that the ANC adopts a very robust mechanism, that it evaluates its work as a party in government, and it can report to society as it perceives itself as the leader of society, and that the ANC actually should be very open when it recalls a comrade from cabinet or the provincial legislature, because it is a leader of society, and therefore by that matter, it actually reports to society, which then poses a problem for this identity as a liberation movement. Liberation movements generally agitate for freedom against a very oppressive, draconian political system. How do you characterize the political system today in South Africa? I know we talk a lot about the balance of forces, the motive forces. That's the language you find in the strategy and tactics documents of the African National Congress. But does this identity of a liberation movement still serve the ANC well? Why has the ANC stopped focusing on questions that completely deal with the idea of governance? For example, you'll know, Kwazi, and the chairperson, of course, will also know that the ANC used to have a very serious conversation about the status of provinces in our country. Necessarily so because the ANC was concerned about how do you make the bureaucracy more efficient, how do you make the bureaucracy more responsive to the needs of our people. But over the years, the ANC has stopped having those robust conversations about the structure of government because it threatens to undo a layer as to
Akona, your network is failing you now. I'm not
let
sure.
me conclude by saying, because I see you are strict on my time. Let me conclude by saying there is a sense of, generally in South Africa, citizens are tired and they feel that we talk a lot on a number of issues, and they feel we don't do enough to act. And I wonder, what is it that makes it difficult for us to act on the things that we know we should be acting on? For example, disciplining members who do not uphold organizational principles, dismissing leaders who do not represent the virtues of the organization. What is it about us that makes it difficult for us to act? But I also do want to end on a positive note, as the SG did end on a positive note about the things that work in KwaZulu Natal. There are certain things that you have pioneered, such as the Operation Sukuma Sake. I attended 2 weeks ago the KZN Growth Coalition, where robust conversations are happening between KZN government and business. But I do think that as a takeaway, one of the things that is happening in South Africa is that citizens are losing hope, not just in one political party, but in the political system itself. And I think leaders of political parties need to interrogate their conduct across the board to ask whether or not it inspires confidence amongst the populace of South Africa. Otherwise, we run the risk not just of the ANC perhaps losing power, but we run the risk of getting illegitimate governments because they would have been elected by 30% of the registered electorate or 25% of the registered electorate. And that would give us even much more socio-political problems in society. And I think that is the last conversation that as you go forward, we must be asking the question, how do we rebuild confidence in political leaders, not only of the African National Congress, but even of those who say they are an alternative, but do not position or behave as an alternative. Thank you very much, Chair, and to the panelists and the guests here.
Thank you so much, Lukhona. Now we'll go straight to the Provincial Chair for his input.
Thank you. Thanks, facilitator, Mr. Wazimshengu. Greetings to the leadership. Greetings to the panelist, Dr. Lehotla, as well as Mr. Lukhona Mnguni. Greetings to all participants who are here and those who are connected virtually. Professor Ashwin Desai, thanks for being here. Professor Nzimakwe, and all members of the intelligence. Well, my first point is simple. We are here to listen, draw lessons as a liberation movement that listen to the people. And therefore, we invite all views, critical and constructive. And my first point of departure is that the ANC exists to serve the people of South Africa. It does not exist for its own sake, but exists as an instrument of transformation. It is tasked with the mandate of creating a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society. This was a vision that brought all members of the MDM together before 1994. And therefore, all of us who were in the struggle said there is something common in a distant horizon, and that is the objective of the struggle, the non-racial, non-sexist, united, democratic, and prosperous society. And the critical question is whether in South Africa there is any vision today that holds all of us together. Whether you are in government, you are in the parties, political parties, you represent unions or intelligentsia. Is there a vision that we share, which is common, and which we are all striving to achieve? Well, the outcome of the 2021 to others has been taken as the end of the ANC. In any way, the obituary of the ANC have been prepared with the final hope that it will be delivered in 2024. There are a number of those who have written on this subject. There's a book called The Fall of the ANC, What Next? And there are others who have opinions about the future of the ANC. All of that is noted, but from our point, we are of a view that the current situation requires all of us as patriots to debate the state of affairs in the country and respond. One of the critical issues that have been raised is that have been raised by former President Mbeki, who said the ANC is too big to fail. And what is the meaning of the failure of this big organization? It's not an arrogant statement that seeks to suggest that the ANC is the only party to lead, then that will lead people forever. But it's too big in its own history, with its own history. It is too big with its own structures and membership right now. And I still contend that there is no party bigger than the ANC. Even those who are struggling to displace the ANC are saying they will only form coalition post the 2024. And there is no party that sees itself winning without a coalition. So What are issues that we think affected us as the ANC? We think there are two factors, objective and subjective factors. Subjective factors are those that eat you internally. And we think among those, it's internal contestation, factionalism, the whole issue of membership buying, gatekeeping, and all of those that are attributed as sins of incumbents, including arrogance, aloofness, and social distance between the ANC and the electorate. And therefore, at the center of this will also be the functionality of structures, especially at a lower level. Then there are issues that you'll consider at an objective point of view. These are issues that are out of the control of the ANC. The very first one is democracy. As the democracy is maturing, it's not yet matured, people begin to view government not as a terrain of the struggle, but as a career. And therefore, there will be those who will stand because they see that being a councillor comes with a salary. Not just that it is a terrain of struggle to achieve a particular vision. The second, the elections took place against the backdrop of hardship imposed by economic constraints, resulting in worsening conditions of poverty and unemployment. So objectively, that is the second challenge. The third challenge is that of perceived or real treatment and eventually jailing of former President Jacob Zuma. It had a serious effect, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. The fourth is the whole issue of the internal squabbles or tensions in the Zulu royal house, where others held the view that the ANC government is not intervening. Whether that view was correct or not, and whether you will try to explain the processes, that becomes secondary. And what will obtain, it's a perception. And you need to double effort if you are to address perceptions. That also include the whole judgment on issues of Kwashembe. Not to say the judgment was wrong or right, but the manner in which, or the timing that it happened, leading to number of activities around Kwashembe Church. Those are issues that are there outside the control of the movement. The July unrest, then lastly, the service delivery concerns. So in all, I would want to end by agreeing with presenters, especially the SG, who talked about Operation Sugumasake. And from where we stand, this is the issue of service delivery. Are we responding enough to concerns that are raised in our war rooms, in our DTTs? Are we able to respond and ensure that there is a change? Are we able to provide services to people in townships? But then the main issue, how are we addressing unemployment? There is an intervention plan that have been developed by the ANC and the ANC government to address unemployment. It talks to the issue of creating mass employment opportunities. It talks to the issue of growing industrialization in the province, but it also talks to growing agriculture in rural areas. And fourthly, it talks to growing the infrastructure development project in the province. Without responding, I want to take the points raised by Mr. Lukona as well. The whole issue of value systems in the ANC, the identity issue, and incapacity to implement what we know is correct. And therefore, that takes me to three issues that the PEC of the ANC is grappling with currently. And the first question is whether we are doing enough to fight all these tendencies that we've characterized as subjective tendencies. The second is whether we are all committed to the task of achieving unity and renewal of the movement. Thirdly, it's whether we know what our people want from the ANC and are we able to deliver on those expectations. And these are the three issues that the ANC PEC is grappling and dealing with on an ongoing basis. But thank you for all input. I believe this lays the platform for engagement. And I have said we've come here not with a defensive approach, but with an attitude to engage and to be persuaded and to learn from the panelists and to learn from all participants. Let 100 flowers blossom. Let 100 school of thought contend. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Comrade Chair of the province. Now, comrades, I will not be tempted to try and summarize or lift up points from the three presenters. I'm sure we have been noting. We're going to take discussions now. And I would like to start with comrades and colleagues who are on a virtual platform. If I can be assisted, Comrade Tembe, Kupai, Comrade Ndu. Let's check if there are any contributors from the virtual platform. There seem to be none. There seem to be none. Okay, let's take a contribute. Kubai. Okay, there's Siyabonga Zama. That's written Siyabonga Zama there.
Thanks, Comrade Chair, and greetings to the leadership and the panel. Thanks for my presentation that are insightful. Ngizoreza nje mhlambe izinto ezo-3 kuphela emanating from the presentation. I think what we need to accept ukuthi ANC has proven to be very susceptible to our internal election processes. We elect, we have a PGM, we had a ward conference, we have a regional conference, and these processes have a tendency of destabilizing the ANC. I think maybe we'll need to go back and look at ways and means of conducting out these internal election processes, because these are the processes that seem to impact negatively on the ANC. There's the other one, it's the selection of councillors. I think our process has not done very well in most cases to bring quality councillors. And the processes, the final processes, they tend to be engulfed by factionalism as to who knows who in the process. The issue of list management has impacted we ANC. The last one, Chair, Usuku Massacre is a good initiative, as confirmed by the provincial chairperson and the former statistician general. But I think because it talks direct to abantu basemakaya, the rural communities, I think we are still battling to fully respond to issues they raise in Pagati, because they are raised by those issues are raised go Maspala and municipalities. sometimes lack capacity to respond on those issues. And there is a lack of integration between provincial government departments and local municipalities. The last one that I will make one thought, so the CNZ mind, is the alignment of the Suguma Sake program with the district development model. I don't believe we are moving with speed in that regard so that we can be able to start responding on developmental issues, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have two more hands, and those will be the last hands, colleagues, comrades from the virtual platform. It's Desiree Erasmus, and who else? Kupai? It's one now. Okay. Let's take Desiree.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks. This is for the Premier. Sir, in going through your points, you did not once mention corruption. You have mentioned many other things, but you have not mentioned corruption and how it affects the ANC and how it affects voters. You've spoken broadly about service delivery issues, but you haven't been specific about corruption and its effect on service delivery issues. Why is that? Please just give us an overview of how corruption can be seen amongst the voters as adding to the death knell of the ANC, which you yourself said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now going to take hands here. Their contributions, comrades, colleagues. Let's take hands here. I will give you numbers, comrades, so that ngize ngiqhathe nama-comments kanti bekuvele kuthiwa ngifile esihlalo manje mina nojesu nje kuphela ngale kwethuna. So it's number one. Okay, ngizoqala la nje kubhejana ngoba u-PC member. Ngizogcina ngawo ubhejana ongcono uyabona. Qala ngale sikalala number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6 Gina, 7, then 8. Not more than 2 minutes, colleagues, comrades.
Ngibingelele Hlalo. Umpumelelo kazikalala. Noma le ka 2 minutes singena umuntu esesukumile bezo summarize kahle. But I'll try and be short. Firstly, let me say it gives a bit of hope ukuthi inhlangano efana ne-ANC would call a meeting such as these ones. La besuke bezotshena khona amaqiniso. It really talks to the renewal project nento yokuthi sifuna uku-understand ukuthi izinto masiyishintsha kanjani. Mhlawumbe ke siqale ngaphandle nangaphakathi. The one thing that needs to be done is analysis of a voter terrain esasibhekana nayo ukuthi itheni. Now the same voter caliber esasinako 94 has completely changed to what we have now. So the different needs of abantu abasuke bekhona from that time up until now sishintshile. The question would be, what study groups do they have within the ANC to take care of those particular engagements and those studies? Khona uzokwazi ukuthi uma ukhuluma nomuntu ofunda eDurban North, umuntu osemlazi, umuntu osenkandla, what exactly do they think? Into abasuke bafuna ukuthi ayenze. Nama-structures esiwasebenzisayo, social media, even ukuyamasontweni kusasebenza nama-webinars, so that when you transmit the message of what is the ANC going to do, ibese iba right. Yesibili, noma linked to that is the caliber of individuals that are voted in. Nendlela akhethwa ngayo. I won't go into that because the previous speaker said it. But linked to logo, let's look at the system esiyisebenzisayo, which is the PR system. What you find is something very peculiar. On the wards, we told you it is predominantly ANC councillors. However, if you go up to EPR, it's a completely different terrain when it comes to political parties. The danger in that is that the PR councillors, nama-councillors, they choose which budget yagopi. Now, if you mean what yami ngekizithole lutho ubani umuntu abazomutoyitoyela mina hayi laba balapha phezulu. So maybe be in the footpath of ukuthi kuyoba khona ifeyila ngokuhamba kwesikhathi ngoba mase kushaya door to door kuyothi ikhansela salivotela kodwa la kasikaze silenzele lutho. Ikhansela bese lithi kodwa ibudget ayinikezwa mina ngijongo ku-IDP. So this is something efanele ibheke ukuthi yiphi indlela ezokwazi ukuthi ilungise ngayo, and that would need a much more scientific approach of saying, let's have these internal working groups of the ANC. la kuzokwazi khona ukubona ukuthi le constructive criticism esikhuluma ngayo manje yenzeka kanjani. Abantu abaselectwayo to be volunteers ababe patriotic bakwazi ukuthi ne-ANC noma i-PEC ibe nayo i-monitoring and evaluation system yakhona ukuthi izothini. On Mondays, let's have a meeting ezobe sithi what Spanban, lapha eThekwini, what have you done, what you're going to do this week. That is a type of monitoring and evaluation ezokwazi ukuthi iqhubeke sikwazi ukuthi sibe nayo. Bese yokugcina, let's not forget ukuthi the ANC is a brand. So a brand does not only limit to the logo negama elisuke libhaliwe, but it also talks to the individuals. So the leaders that are there, umuntu mehamba ngabo hamba ngendlela exemplary yini, noma are there any things mhlambe sithi masisibona umuntu ezenza eceleni ubona it does not reflect the values of the ANC, it does not reflect the values of the society. Once umuntu wangene ku leadership role, automatically i-individualism yakhe isala ngemuva ngoba usuke sethi I'm representing this particular brand engisuke ngizorepresent at a particular point in time. Ngiyabonga Hlanga.
Thanks. Number 2.
Ngiyazwakala. Sibingelele ihlalweni engaphambili. Igama lami ngingumboneni Sibongo wakabhekiswayo. Unobhala wama Professionals Progressive Forum kwi-region yaseThekwini. Indaba yelunga likaKhongolose kwiwadi yase 101. Elingakaphelelwa isikhathi. Ngithe mangabe ngithiwa size la ngaba nento yokuthi konje yini umuntu ofanele akayikhulume la ngoba kuthiwa uzolalelwa bese kuyenziwa. Yini konje amalunga ka-ANC yangayazi yenza ukuthi u-ANC ehlelwe ukuthenjwa ngalolu hlobo ehlelwe ngalo masibuka imphumela ye-local government elections. Ase ngicabanga ukuthi mhlambe zimbili mina izinto engingayibalula la. Ezinye zazo seyikhave kakhulu ama-panelists lawa amabili akade ekhulume ngaphambili. Kodwa ngibona sengathi eseqhulwini elikhulu yiyo lena yokuthi uGwede wake wathi u-ANC kusuke wavuleka iwindi kwangena yonke inhlobo yesinambuzane. Now lezi inambuzane ezingaphakathi iluma noma ubani ayikhethe umuntu. Now i-problem isekutheni ke kudilwa kanjani neinambuzane. Ngoba lento sasikhuluma ngayo sasikhula sithi siyayazi kwa-ANC ukuthi i-activism ayisekho. Sekuyi-hooliganism nje khona. Everybody who wants to own the ANC today wants to be a leader. Uyibona leader akekho umuntu odakaholi ka-ANC manje. Bonke babaholi. Even nalabo abalandela iy'ntwala zokusolwa ngey'nkohlakalo bathi bangabaholi. Basafuna ukuyohola futhi. Despite the fact that kuney'nkinga ezibakhungethe laba bantu. Now that is the very same thing ke eyenza ukuthi confidence lapha ngaphandle kubantu iye ngokuya ilokhu ilahleka ukuthi umdlalo lo ngoba ekugcineni kusho ukuthi laba bantu basibheke bona and yet before 1994 ANC yakhipha i-document ethi we are ready to govern. Now lo document ethi ready to govern inama pointers enye lama pointers ishiwe uphalo ekhuluma nge-RDP. What has happened to that thing i-RDP? It was thrown out of the window. Nobody knows why. And yet it was a developmental concept. Now, utike was KZN sithathe usuku Operation Sukumasaka. And indeed, 2011, it was introduced in 2011. I remember because I was a senior manager at that time, we were near my department. And we participated, all of us as deployees, as senior managers in various municipalities. Kuzeni, the problem is a very good lokuzana developmental concept of issue. Ifela go maspala because that is where the action must happen. And we will come year after year. Sibe nama report. We go to the same house. You find just as Ishonga has not been attended to. So a problem ilapo yet maspala bati. There's a ward-based plan, and there's an RDP municipality. Masekuya phezulu kuyalahleka. There is no synergy. Yokuthi ukuphi ukukhuluma nokunye ku-address wamakwenze njani. So mhlambe le esingayibeka khuzeni yokuthi from that side ka-Operation Sukumasaka, I think we need to gather again and re-strategize ukuthi is it still delivering yini as it was intended to. Ngoba khona la isiphuma khona njengoba ngisho ilahleka kakhulukazi when it comes ama officials they make themselves available. Uthola ukuthi abantu sofanele bayishiye siyishiye kubona lento baqhubeka sobuya ngomnyunyaka bengenzi lutho abakamasipala. Lastly Mshengu. Angazi kahle hle comrades in this house. Ukuthi uma ngabe uANC ethi uyileader ye-society ifike i-society ithi asikwazi thina ukuqhubeka nokuthi lo bhuti noma lo sisi lona othiwa kabe ikhansela nazi izinto azenzayo esingayithandi emphakathini kungene kwi-process abuyele kuthiwa uANC uthi une-confidence kuyena uthi uyabuza ukuthi yiphi le confidence ethiwa uyadeliver udeliver iphi uthuleke. Now ku-introduce le system esiphuma kuyona ukuthi siwakhetha kanjani labantu bazoba amakhansela. It was a good thing. My intentions were good. But somehow it was manipulated phansi laphayana. I'm speaking from experience, comrades, because in my ward where I am, that thing happened. Now, uthuma uthi uyakhuluma, you end up about bekutshela ukuthi le mfowethu uzosibangela ukushisa ngoba wena uyatheorize thina sifuna ukuyodla iyashileti lokuyodla leli. Now we really need to make sure that we follow up the things that imphakathi eyishoyo. Unkosazana ngomunye iminyaka waba ne-commission yayisho okurong ngokungena kwamakhansela. No action was taken against the councillors that were named. Instead, aphinda abuya ngeminye iminyaka. Again, futhi namanje imphakathi uthi ANC they are still looking at their objections. As object to amakhansela nge-process, abantu nge-process yongena kala amakhansela. And how do you think these councillors are going to deliver? That is why amaningi eThekwini amakhansela agcina sehlala la kuthiwa khona security flats ehlaliswa ashiya imphakathi yawo. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Number 3.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Maurice Langa, the Deputy Principal of St. Francis College in Marion Hill. My question is, the majority of the enfranchised voters are young people who are far detached from the narrative of the liberation struggle in the country. What strategies are there to ensure that these electorate overwhelmingly vote the ANC?
Thank you so much. Zwile mfundisi. Ngawusayona. Mfundisi Macingwane platform.
I just followed another type of a person. Thank you, Chair. Maybe I will start by saying the disunity among the leaders is also affecting us. Most of the time, kukhona into eyenzakalayo nathi esike sizwe sabantu nje singaphandle into ekhuluma ngokuthi ukulinyazwa nokulimazeka kwabantu okungenzeka ukuthi even nasemisebenzini la sithumele khona abantu bethu it's a challenge. It's a challenge because that makes many people who looks at the movement and say, if these people are destroying one another, what is it that is going to happen? I know for sure, ukuthi maybe we might not subscribe to a notion like us in the Bible, where we normally say a leader must be a person who takes care of his family first, and which makes that assurance ethi uma ekwazile ukunakekela umndeni wakhe uzokwazi ukubanakekela abanye abantu. Mhlambe as the African National Congress we need also to make sure ukuthi uma ngabe sicela abantu ukuthi basihole sibe nesure ukuthi ama skills of leadership unto them. We are not just imposing people, but we are being led by people who know how to lead. But lastly, I will say I will suggest that we have lenda abayibiza monitoring and evaluation on service delivery. And it's my emphasis because most of the time we are born with noma ngabe izinto zenzeka, but kuyasilela on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think let's go to number 5. Yeah, give it to Kina, yes.
Thank you. Oh, that was 6. Thank you, Chair. It's so good not to be asking a question for a change, but to be making a comment. Ubongani Gini Kama. No, a lot has been said, and thanks very much, Chairperson, for covering most of what we have also perceived as having affected the ruling party, but also the ruling party came up with new systems in the previous elections, like that of conducting interviews to the candidates, mayorship, those who were running for mayorship or speaker positions. But I don't know if the system was correctly followed, and because after that, there were a lot of grievances, even people, senior members of the party from municipalities calling in to say, no, the processes were not run. I was number 1, I got number 1, and I was the top candidate, but someone else that was number 3 was elected to be a mayor, to stand as a mayor. And as the result, we had to mobilize the other parties not to vote for our candidates because we're not happy with how the process was run. So I don't know if the party has done post-mortem on that piloted system that was being piloted. And of course it was being applied, I don't know, for the first time forcibly, or and now if the party will still go on with it, maybe the party will have to look at that. Also, in the way of responding to grievances from the members in branch levels, especially going to the process of choosing councillors. We know the ANC process, involving communities, discussing the names, the 3 names and all. And there were a lot of grievances to an extent that there were a lot of marches that were going to the provincial office, but to the dismay of many members of the ANC, they were not even listened to. No one would even be at the office to take and accept their memorandum. So that's really, I think, killed also the energy and momentum of the members. And it was like the leadership is running away from its own members, and that didn't show a good picture of leaders who can be responsible and who knows how to go to their people. And the same happened in Msunduzi, where they were, for about a week or so, there were protests there from the ANC members, not community members, not just community members, but ANC members. So I agree with the Chairperson if he says they realize that they need to go back to the ground and be one with the people there and not be arrogant or walk away from abantu ngoba ibona abantu who knows what happens and what goes on the ground. Also, if the ANC has any program or strategy of uniting now and reconciling and reuniting the members, because we know going to other regional conference or BGM conference or whatever conference, there are always different sides. I mean, the ANC is a democratic party and it is competitive in its nature. And now, what strategies does the party have of uniting the members that were during when they're competing against each other or when they were running against each other democratically? So now, once the leadership has been elected and they emerge victoriously, in order to avoid going to court to challenge each other more and to have grudges for 3 years, you say, the chairperson is already there, but this member doesn't acknowledge the chairperson because it's not the chairperson that I wanted. What does the party do to try and unite the members once again? And for the leader to go back to the members and say, I'm the leader for all of you, not only for a certain faction. Because these things of the factions, they start from the ground level, the branches, and they grow up to national, and it runs for 3 years, and you see the persons like when they get there in the top position, all the target or the plan is to just hit all those who are against me and uplift those who are pro me. I think if the party can just look deeply into those things, and of uniting the party, the processes, and making sure that those who didn't win, they are still made to feel that they're still members of the party and they belong to the party. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was number 6 here behind you.
Behind me.
Yeah, the.
Oh,
Sazokubheka ngicama ukuthi kufanele nokukhuluma la.
Thank you so much. I'm Patrick Mbono from St. Francis College. I just want to know, don't you think as the ANC, there is a bigger role that can be played by agricultural science teachers? As you have mentioned, that the main thing is to create jobs, and what communities want is job creation. So don't you think that those teachers who are teaching agricultural sciences, having been provided with the equipment in the province and the space where they can try to provide or to raise cattle, to raise whatever, the things that you will be donating to those organizations, instead of donating there, we take those things to schools, and schools will be responsible for such. And those who are doing business studies, I think they can also be part of the team that are forming this job creation. I think job creation is very simple. It's just that when we talk about job creation, we look at a broader spectrum, like millions that will be needed, this and that. I think job creation, it's about starting something and then growing that thing into a bigger thing. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ngamo. Then we'll come this side.
Thank you very much, Chair of the session. Greetings to the leadership and all attendees. Chair, in his presentation, Statistician General indicated that in areas like Umsinga municipality, since 1994, there's been a significant progress in dealing with the challenges of poverty, which means that the ANC government delivered. I'm saying that because I want to come to a point that says, much as I agree with all the views that have been expressed here in terms of failures here and there on the part of the ANC, particularly on issues of service delivery. But my point is that if we are serious about reclaiming our space as the leader of society, as the ANC, we should channel all our energies toward reviving the branches. That is where you win the elections. If the branches are weak, if they don't hold councillors and municipalities accountable, if they fail to capitalize on the lobby groups that are mushrooming everywhere and form partnerships with them, influence them to embrace the ideology of the ANC, we will never succeed in dealing with the challenges that we have. Right now, Chair, there are many organizations that are being formed in responding to challenges that are there at local level. Those organizations are led by people who are not aligned to the ANC. They even organize marches to ANC-led municipalities. But ANC leaders at branch level are not there to check what is happening. We have lost it. We are failing to go back to basics the way we committed. In most of the conferences that we have had, we have always been committing that we need to go back to basics, but we are not. On the issue of consultation and social distance that the people are complaining about, I think as a way forward, perhaps we'll have to, after elections, instead of relaxing and wait for another elections, we should intensify this engagement with communities, go back to them after elections. The very same volunteers who were doing door to door, they must go back to those communities to give feedback and also to showcase that they are not going there only during campaigns, but they are committed to maintain that constant consultation with the communities at local level. The issue of Sukumasake is important, but that's another thing that is affected by branches that are not functional, because the branches must have, for instance, the database of all families in the ward and know what is happening in each family, so that they are able to bring those issues to the attention of the war room. But it seems our comrades at branch level are seized with other issues other than servicing the people. That's my input, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks. Let's take the last two hands here, comrades, shortly.
Greeting to the House and also the panel. Igama Wong Musa, student leader at UKZN and also a political student. Mine would be the ANC doesn't have relevance to the youth, and the youth contribute almost the third of the population in South Africa. Other parties are growing because they have the relevance to the youth. They preach what the youth wants to hear. But when it comes to the ANC, they are trying, but it's not enough. And the failure in the youth can also be attributed to the dysfunctionality of the youth league of the ANC. They did try their best during the local government election, but maybe they were seeing that there is a Congress sitting soon. They were very active. But when they saw that the Congress is delaying, they stopped being active. So it's the relevance of the youth to the ANC. And it's sad to know because the lifespan of South Africa is very low. Before it was celebrated to have a great grandfather, but now it's more celebrated to have a grandfather because it's youth than dead. So it's very important for the ANC to be relevant to the youth, and we appreciate such program from the Premier's office, the Youth Fund, and everything. But more needs to be done. And also, if we're reflecting to the elections, the ANC can do great work, but when it comes to the last minute, the Sumasaka can be very great, but then when at that moment when everything counts, you can't go to a neighbor. What I can say is that we lost because of some sabotages that we did to ourselves. You can't have load shedding on the week of voting. You can't have that on the week of voting. Something could have been prevented, but we did this to ourselves, but there is still room for improvement, and more engagement like this can also attribute to great improvement. But what I can emphasize is that the ANC needs to fix the youth side of itself. Thank you.
Thanks. Bejan, saying I amend because of time, you will make your short input as you do the vote of thanks. So your vote of thanks will encapsulate the input that you wanted to make. So just prepare yourself for that. Yes. What we'll do, comrades, we'll take the chair because he has to rush to another engagement. And then we'll take Lukona, we'll take the former SG, then Mahlobo, and then Pecha Nomhlobo yobo so uvala ke. So be so etalogo bufuna ukusho. Pecha. Comrade Chair.
No, thanks.
Lela kuhlali yasebenza.
No, thanks. I think there are, in a main, two main questions directed to me. But I was saying also, I believe there is a lot of value in continuing with engagement. Because I've seen other colleagues here have contributed, but limited by time. My contributions on the input will be, firstly, I've noted all issues raised, and just 2 or 3 issues. I think Deseret or yes, she asked the question why I didn't deal with Desiree Erasmus about corruption. Corruption is a perception and it is real. And that's why as the ANC we have taken a view that we must deal with corruption head on. We've been dealing with cases. I think the local government elections took place against the backdrop of that issues, of those all issues relating to PPEs, nationally and provincially. And I think it's one area that we continue, we have to continue to deal with as the ANC. It is twofold. How do we deal with corruption where it happens in government? And that is important. But secondly, how do we deal with it as the ANC? Because it affects the ANC as the organization. Pumelelo also spoke about the brand ANC. And therefore, I will agree that perceptions, whether real or not, of corruption undermine the standing of the ANC. And as we go forward, we must intensify the fight against corruption. It is also impacting on impacting negatively on service delivery. So I believe that is correct, and it's a view we must take as we go forward. The last point that I think I should address, or last but one, is the youth. I think we must agree that the ANC did itself a very bad disadvantage. The two disbandment of the ANC Youth League have not assisted the rebuilding of the Youth League. Whether you will talk of the disbandment of the Youth League post 2012 National Conference, it affected the Youth League, and then the disbandment of the Youth League post Nazareth Conference have also affected the capacity to mobilize the youth. I'm not sure whether we've put in place sound programs to revive the organization. Even at that time when the Youth League was disbanded in around 2013 after the Mangaung Conference, we managed to build it in a form of creating structures. But we can agree that from that time, young people were leading themselves. And I think there is a need of introspection and build the Youth League as the youth organ of the ANC that will really champion issues that affect young people. We can do our own programs as the ANC, but it is important to have institutions or the organization that will have young people on their own, engaging on their issues and mobilizing themselves in their own language. So I think that issue that you have raised Bong Musa is quite correct. And we will look on the youth in the ANC structures to ensure that we rebuild the ANC youth league. Unfortunately, we also have to confront one of those issues that we have not dealt with correctly in the movement, factionalism. Because if you build the structure like the youth league, you don't need to look on it based on self-interest. Let's build the youth league that will support us as a group, or the youth league that will support so and so. That does not help. You build it mechanically, and you don't apply political instruments and strategies, which include building the organization, political education, and ensure that you inculcate the values, the understanding of the character of the youth that we need. And we don't need the youth that will listen to the ANC only. The youth must talk on behalf of young people. If it means confronting leaders in the ANC, so be it. As long as you represent genuinely the interest of the constituency. Many people I know, even within the room, I don't know that those who have served in institutions of higher learning have been suffering a lot from vibrant student formation. That trauma, I know that many have been traumatized in the past. But if they are having a leadership that guides them, it becomes manageable. And the lack of political education amongst young people lead to unguided strikes and violent protests that are really, really not necessary. And therefore, we do need to build a strong organization that will represent the voice of young people. So I take that. I also take the point of jobs. The 35% of unemployment, that unemployment rate, if you narrow it into segments, and you will find that majority are young people. And therefore, the point that Patrick raised, you may struggle and want to focus on conglomerates to create jobs, well and fine, but also interventions that are small, led by SMMEs, do assist. In fact, that is a global phenomenon. Most of countries use SMMEs in areas such as agriculture, light manufacturing, and other sectors to create jobs for the people. You might find that it's a small company and it will employ 10 people, but that's a lot if you replicate those efforts. And therefore, those are issues. Otherwise, all issues that have been raised, I've noted them, and I'm not going to respond because I've been taking them from Usiyabonga on the internal democracy, the elections of structures, to issues raised by Babu Bekswayo, factionalism, and the failure to act decisively on self-correction. If there is an issue identified and a commission is there, the recommendations must be implemented. And if we said Councillor so-and-so was not elected according to proper processes, we need to act. And I think those points are taken. And I think, colleagues, all of the issues, one issue that I can't leave not appreciating is a call for uniting structures after conferences. And I think that point by Gina is quite important. But I think we have seen in KwaZulu-Natal that we have learned from 2015. Though it takes time to recover and be stable, but we have learned from 2015, which affected us to have many independents in 2016 elections. Though there were also independents now, but they were not in the same number as they were in 2016. 16, and ensuring that we deal with tendencies of winner take all and isolation of those who are not elected. It's important. We will deal with those issues. Otherwise, thank you on my side, Chair. But I was saying, if there are still issues and point of contributions, it will be good to allow the debate to go on because there are PEC members who are here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Comrade Chair. Let's take the former SG, Dr. Pali. Okay, let me start with Lukona first because he had also indicated, I hope he's still connected. Comrade Lukona. Do you still have Lukona? Sayambil. Okay, let's take Dr. Pali.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss important national matters that are confronting us, and I think the contributions that have come from the floor. I would like to focus only on probably one or two, and this is something that you'll be bored by because I'll need a lot of time to talk us through it. But for purposes, because of time constraints, I'll be very brief. I don't think, or rather, I don't think, I know that our systems of planning are poor. Even the RDP, which was attached to, was not a plan, it was a vision that never had a well thought through plan to plan it and to understand it, what it would deliver in what quantities and by when. And that's the essence of a plan. It didn't have that. So it was easy to set it aside with gear, which was also not a plan. And then, of course, we had the NDP and many other things that we thought our plans are not plans. It's just a conglomeration of thoughts that are put together without any real serious thinking around where the country is going to go. Take, for instance, the minerals, the boom of minerals, the price boom of minerals. We suddenly get surprised that there's money, we don't know how to use it because we don't have a strategic planning. And that's why I thought I have to put in my presentation scenarios, because scenarios give you the latitude to think very broadly for the high, low, and so on and so on. But attached to that, you must quantify those scenarios and look at all options. And I mean, this is what Mandela said when he was in prison. And that's what Lembede and them in 1945 discussed. Lembede didn't live that long, but he said, freedom in our lifetime. And for all the people that were there with him, all of them lived up to 1992 at the minimum. All of them, universal. And they saw freedom in their lifetime. They took that pledge and then started planning strategically as to what will happen. And many scenarios took place, including the collapse of the USSR, which was not envisaged in the time when they were thinking. So we really need working with scenarios. And our provinces, ourselves as a nation, we don't work with scenarios. We used to have them in government. They collapsed after 2008. And we didn't carry them through. And to the extent that the government doesn't have scenarios, it actually deprives itself of the safe space to look at alternatives and prepare for the alternatives as they emerge and manage to reflect on when it is going wrong. Because when you have embraced scenarios, you'll be able to say, I'm actually going wrong here. And in terms of this scenario, that's where I'm going to fall. That's why the 2007 scenarios, which were the future we chose, were predicting to the date when the ANC will collapse. These things we discussed in cabinet and said this party will have a serious problem by that time. And the only thing it can do is to go back to society and say, we are sorry. And that's what's happening now. Because we are seeing the developments as they occur. And it's important for the party to actually plot these scenarios. It's important for government to plot these scenarios in order to ensure that it guards against the scenarios that are adverse, not address the situation when it has eventuated. We're already in trouble by that time. And then you are haphazard. So I would argue that we need to have scenarios. And it's not just the scenarios, you've got to quantify them so that you know how much resources you will need. But in the scenarios, you also quantify what the outcome of these plans are. The NDP had some lofty outcomes, but which couldn't be quantified as to what is the path of getting there. So was the RDP. It was a vision that says we'll have to resolve unemployment, inequality, and so on. But you need serious quantification. And when you deal with quantification, you actually have to deal with modeling. And that modeling is not something that comes naturally. It's not a common sense. It's not common sense at all. It's technocracy at its best. And even when we have modeled, there's a lot of uncertainty. And we didn't know that Corona might come. But when we don't even have that modicum of modeling, 60 years from now into the country, the speaker who said life expectancy is low. No, it's actually increased. We live longer now. But I think the youth faced with what they are faced with see their life expectancy going to be very short. And it's likely to be so. So I think as we do this, and that brings me to the question of Operation Sukuma Sake. Operation Sukuma Sake, in the design of how the MECs are focusing on spaces, not on health, not on education, but on spaces, which makes them look at health, education, and so on as an MEC. It's a very useful approach. But Operation Sukuma Sake has a limitation too, because it's not model-based, and therefore it doesn't talk to national, because the policies from national have implications on the province. And the design of policies have to be understood in a model-based system with its implications on the provinces and how the provinces in themselves and by themselves fit in that kind of design of allowing to understand the laws of economic motion of economics. Operation Sukuma Sake has a limitation, which is also the limitation of the district development model. Both systems don't respect the primacy of the laws of economic motion, laws of motion of economics. Because the laws of economic motion define the space. It's not the other way around. Because once you try to operate within a space that is not defined by laws of motion, including variable geometry, you then confine your ability to integrate the space, the spatial, the economic space, the geography, the economic geography, the economic, social, and cultural geography, which are the most important things now with the information technology that make a space just a point in space. All space now is a point in space. But if you don't understand how the agglomerations fit, let me make a point. Dubai today says you can work anywhere in the world, come and stay in Dubai. So you can work in the US, you can work anywhere. And that's their economic thrust from the tax for people who work there. Because now we are connected, you can work from Dubai and work anywhere in the world. And they're going to make the taxation that they get from any nationality who stays in Dubai their own, the main driver of their economic success. So as technology moves and we start working from home, agglomerations are no longer going to be determined by economic activity, but they are likely to be determined by residence, where people reside, because you can be productive anywhere in space. So all these things have to be contextualized in the district development model and Operation Sukuma Sake. what is very important in Corporations Kumasake is it got sustained and it became a development language. The other provinces had all kinds of things that changed over time and you never knew what exactly this whole thing is. But in KwaZulu-Natal, it was sustained administration after administration as a development language. And I think that works for coherence. What is the final point I must talk to? Final point, of course, is this issue of corruption, which is very, very big and it's disruptive. But I think more than corruption is our economic policies. Our economic policies, the recovery and reform program, if you try to model that, it's not going to resolve the problems of South Africa. If you looked at the president's speech and you looked at the speech by the Minister of Finance, they are nowhere near resolving the problems of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. And I think we have to ask more serious questions to the premiers and everybody. Is this enough? Are there no other alternatives? What is the thinking that derives this? In the main, what we have is something that is going to benefit business and leave everybody outside. So the issue of inclusivity doesn't exist. Finally, I think in South Africa, we have a serious problem of the intentions of the Constitution. We don't have the space where we meet as whites, blacks, coloreds, and Indians. Not anywhere. In quantities that make sense. In schools, black children, white children. In worship places, black children, white children, and so on, or adults and so on. In government or work, we are so divided amongst ourselves, we are fighting. The only space where people meet over a long period of time and with the right mindset is at the universities and higher learning, and where they said fees must fall. We went in there as the ENC and all these other political parties, destroyed the movement of students where they said fees must fall. What we should have done and taken opportunity of would have been to say to them, yes, we understand fees must fall. What kind of country do you wish for? And that is the question that must be answered by every student for the 4 years they spend at university. If you are black, you are likely to spend 7 years because you fail, not because you are stupid, but because you are not funded adequately. But whites, blacks, coloreds, and Indians are in those spaces in good numbers, and they can define what the future of this country is. And that can ignite what the youth must do. And they mustn't be destroyed by divisive politics. They can actually follow political parties, but the main essence must be for them to define what future is this country. That, I think, can begin to make us look forward. And the price for that will be pay for all of them. Don't say this one is rich, that one is poor. Pay for all of them in exchange for answering the question, what country is this? If we think about that, in the next 15 years, cohort after cohort at university, at technicons doing that, this country will be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doc. We'll take Mahlobo for 3 minutes and then Comrade Pejane, we will then be doing a vote of thanks for us. Let me indicate, comrades and colleagues, that this is not the last session that we are going to have. This is just the beginning. So we still have a number of series that we are going to convene on different topics. So we may as well just prepare yourself for future topics, but we also want to try and make sure that we don't end this session having been depleted, both on a visual platform, but also here. So that's why we're trying to manage time. Mahlo?
Thank you, Comrade Kwaz. You see, inkinga uthi ugina akasekho lo mbuzo ade ubuzile lana. I'm one person who has been attending to a memorandum, but a specialist in that office of people coming to complain about their list of candidates and whatever. we listened to those processes at the ANC. In fact, we had more than 500 plus. I think Comrade Cyril Kaba is connected here on the virtual platforms. Objections on the list processes of the ANC. And that had an impact on the outcome of the elections in some of the wards. That's why we had some areas of low voter turnout. Our processes were delayed because of the inconvenience of the election. We had 42 days to prepare for these elections. And out of that process, the ANC has got a democratic process of a BGM, of a community meeting, a screening committee, PEC committee verifying NEC, all these stages. Hence, we could not even conclude some of the disputes before the election. We put them on hold. That's why. So we did more, but we could not do enough. I think on that one we agree, and we are very clear that we could have done more on those issues and how they could have been handled better. You see, comrade, one issue the ANC has admitted to when it is engaging within its internal structures is that in the past years of our governance, there have been instances where we have taken our people lightly. What do I mean by that? In colloquial terms, we'll say ukdagwambuso. You get drunk because of the power you have. eThekwini at some point because mshenge kuna le joke they cancel ngeEnglish igama lalo bangiyamhlonipha umuntu omdala. When she was appointed, when she got her first salary, she got shocked. Bagijima waya kumeye ukuthi imeya khona inkinga la angifune ukuboshwa mina nezingane zami le mali engake ngene emholweni wami iqhamukaphi. It's the caliber we're deployed as an organization. At some point in one local, in one region, I won't mention by name, where the mayor who could not speak English nor write English. That's why ANC to do an introspection to say, let us change how we deploy. Let us see what to bring on board as a deployee in a strategic position of deployment. If you are a mayor, let us at least have a minimum qualification beyond your metric, so that you can understand and grasp the issues of governance. If you're in charge of a budget of almost 300 million or 50 billion, and you can't grasp the technicalities thereof, you will be a mayor simply by the chain you are wearing. The official will run the errands around you. It's an issue we'll debate another day, as Ukod Mshenge has been saying, because we're doing that exercise as an organization and to do that introspection. We're in the midterm of our campaign. Let us make an assessment. Have we done well in the governing party? If not, what are we doing to do more? The last issue, you see, when Comrade President Bay was addressing a Western Cape, one issue poses the challenge we as ANC members, cadres or employees, they must improve their thinking capacity. Because sometimes, comrade, correctly or wrongly, we have taken for granted that we are a governing party and will govern till the end of time. And we have been reckless on some of our governance issues. That's how we have reached the point we're in. That's why when you speak of a renewal as an organization, I was saying that let us be sincere on that renewal and its meaning thereof, not only for us as an organization per se, but the people who are serving, because as a deployee ANC, you are a servant of the people. You get elected because you are not someone who's got to an employment, you are a CV or interviewer. You are an employed permanent on contract. The day they lower their hands, you will no longer be there, either as a mayor or as an MP, as an MPL. It's something at some point we've taken for granted and we lost it. It's something we're working on. So let us work on rebuilding this ANC, which will be the ANC which can be truly a representative of the ordinary people of South Africa and be able to take care of their issues. As Cod was saying, let us thank our comrade and all the participants who have been with us it's the beginning of these engagements. We're still going to do more because we wanted that honest reflection. Sometimes it's good to get from the outside to tell you what you're not doing right. Because sometimes amongst ourselves, because to Sigma conference. So the finance regional conference, finance Ketan, provincial conference, national conference. So I can't trample on the toes. I'm saying personal funny vote like an avial funny lamb. But an ordinary person in the outside will be objective to that on these areas and these instances, we are not asking the cause of the liberation movement and our people.
Thank you so much, Mahlobo. So that I don't come back after Upechan. I think there are about 4 points which I noted that I think as an organization we'll have to take up, obviously in addition to what the Comrade Chair Taganipo have indicated. One is making full use of available information and knowledge base to inform our decisions. I think that's critical. Otherwise, there will be too many wrong decisions that we take because we don't defer to a particular knowledge base. So how we create that knowledge base is important. And I think these platforms, as they continue, will be able to assist us. The issue of the value system, not only in the organization, but in society. I think there must be a rational debate in society about the prevailing value system and how it facilitates or hinders the future that we want as South Africa. Making bureaucracy to function optimally and to deliver the conduct of ANC leaders, Mahlobo and members. But lastly, making use of scenarios also to predict the future. I think that's also important. So that you don't say, that conclusion is not backed up by any form of information or knowledge base or modeling, as former SG was saying. But those were just points that I wanted to lift up in addition to what Comrade Mahlobo and Chair were saying. We are advised that immediately after Upejane, thank all of us, we will have to go down to the ground floor for dinner. And you are all invited, because if you don't honor this invitation, there shall be consequences. So you are all invited to the dinner, and I will not be coming back to the podium after Upejane. So immediately after him, we will all then be requested to descend to the ground floor for dinner. Thank you so much. Over to you, Upejane Omhlophe.
Thank you very much. Wazim Shengu, you have successfully gagged me. You know, after the provincial chairperson has made his closing remarks, I'm not going to, or rather we are not allowed to say anything lest we risk going against the line. But greetings to you, ladies and gentlemen. Mine is the simplest, to say thank you to all of you. Really, one cannot capture in words the level of wisdom that we as the ANC in KZN, together with the society and those who were online, have benefited. Indeed, we descended here to this venue being at a particular level of wisdom, but as we leave, we are more wiser. We would like to profusely convey our appreciation and gratitude to all of you, particularly Dr. Pali Lehohla, Lukhona Mnguni. I've heard there is Professor Desai and Professor Nzimakwe and all those who are in attendance, for sacrificing all that is dear to you, but elected to come here, heeding the call by our liberation movement as it attempts to rekindle and reconnect with the masses of KwaZulu-Natal. Indeed, your coming here, those who are online and those of you who are here physically, has not been in vain. We hope that you will indeed witness the reawakening and the renewal of this giant called ANC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. We can then descend to the ground floor.